This is that bonus content. This is that little Easter egg.
Hell
Like
yeah.
it's for the people that are actually like the real people that are here before we're even recording the show.
The OGs out there, the real ones.
Right? I know. It's great too because it's a work day. You know, Les Claypool said I like weekends because I get to see my working friends.
I forget what day it is half the time, man. Every day looks the same, you know. Article a day keeps the editors away. Just
I like that.
You know.
I like that. I like that.
Right.
All right. Let's go live. Is Urban Meyer crazy or crazy like a fox? That and more this week on the couch. Ian Hartitz, we're looking at Jacksonville's offense a lot. What do we think?
I keep having more questions by the day, and seemingly the only good thing is these Laviska Shenault training camp reports,
Right.
which is fun. I'm a big fan of Laviska Shenault. I agree that he might very well be the best skill position player on the Jaguars. But Sig, what do we always say throughout training camp about preseason? We are trying to look at opportunity. We're trying to see what the rotations are. What position is Laviska Shenault playing in this offense? Because in my mind, it's Chark and Marvin Jones on the outside. Urban Meyer apparently has nicknamed Travis Etienne Slash. Like he is playing the Percy Harvin role. We have heard that. They're going to have a tight end. Even offenses like the Cardinals, like the Panthers that don't necessarily throw to a tight end, you know, they still use a tight end. And then we have James Robinson or Carlos Hyde there. So I'm wondering if the Visca hype is so real, where is he actually going to play? Or is it going to be just a muddled, you know, depth chart with Tim freaking Tebow coming in inside the 10-yard line, man?
Right. Right. And behind all this is this idea that when we're psychoanalyzing Urban Meyer based on the moves we've seen, it sure seems like he's just going to keep doing what he was doing. And it seems like he has his fingers in what's going on in the kitchen. Yeah. So then, but let's say he's Chip Kelly. I was talking to Kevin O'Brien about this yesterday. I think this is a real interesting place to get into the subject of what we should be thinking about in June, which is, how are these offenses going to look, or how are they going to be different than the last time we saw them? And with some of these teams with new regimes and some new personnel, you know, there's a really wide range of outcomes. Now, if he's Chip Kelly, that means that there's a chance this offense could still be a success initially and create surplus fantasy value. But then, like you say, you get into projecting like whose buckets are going to get filled. And I guess ETN is, and it makes sense that he's the first Jag being drafted because he's the one that Meyer's going to force on the field to show how smart he is, right?
You got to, man. But I guess my rebuke to the Chip Kelly idea is that we haven't seen Urban be this super forward-thinking offensive mind since, like, you know, 10 years ago almost. True. If you go back to that Ohio State offense, the last time he was truly in control in 2016, they hired Ryan Day to be their co-OC and QB coach in 2017. Like, bro, I'm a Columbus, Ohio lifer, diehard Buckeyes fan. JT Barrett could barely complete a pass against Michigan and Clemson after looking like a pretty damn good quarterback during the start of his career. I mean, the manner in which Cardale, in which even like the quarterbacks were regressing one after another. I know Urban helped invent the spread back in the day at Bowling Green. Crazy story, man, how he talks about like literally a quarterback accidentally, like I think fumbling the snap, and he just saw the defensive end waiting for it, and Urban's like, read option. It's incredible. And Urban knows more about football in his little finger than we probably do combined in our entire body. So it's not hitting on Urban. I guess my concern is like Urban, who has, let's face it, been kind of an egomaniac, wants to control every single factor about the teams over the years that he's coached. Apparently he wants to run this offense, man. And that's the one spot that I guess I didn't see coming this year. Having Darrell Bevell, having Urban come up, to me, I guess I drank the Kool-Aid about him, you know, just really wanting to focus more on his mental health and being more of the CEO guy. It sounds like he wants to run every single part of this team. That's why we have Tim Tebow here. That's why we have and all these just kind of crazy storylines popping up one after another, man. So, yeah, I think ETN deserves to go first, but I've just soured on, honestly, everyone else. Even Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence should absolutely deserve to be a number one overall quarterback pick. But at this point, man, in 2021, I would take Trey Lance and Justin Fields over.
Yeah, absolutely. And that includes the proposition of redraft leagues, right? Because right after the draft, dynasty rookie drafts, or you're taking the long view in your draft grade analysis and things like that. But now let's just talk 2021. Let's look at what's on our plate right now. And you're right to consider just fading the whole Jacksonville offense. Actually, they have 3 wide receivers going in the first 10 rounds of a 12-team draft, like over an underdog, which is rarefied air. Like the only other teams on that list are like Dallas, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and that's not, do we know that Jacksonville's going to be that kind of offense? We'll see. I mean, how much was quarterback play holding them back, but how much could offensive design hold this team back, or otherwise like this inconsistency? Like you said, you picture like a turbulent ride. Give me another offense that when it comes time to settle what you envision, you can't feel settled right now.
I think the 49ers are one I've consistently been moving down a little bit the more the offseason has gone. As bad as, none of us wanted Mac Jones to go there at 3. And it's clear we did not think he was worthy of that position. And I still don't. I mean, that's fine. But if we would have had Mac Jones there, that would have been the orchestrator, the guy that maybe could enable each of Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk. With Trey Lance, man, I mean, our PFF draft guide comped this guy to Taysom Hill with legit arm talent.
Right.
Like I'm not saying he's Taysom Hill, but look at Jalen Hurts, look at Lamar Jackson, look at these offenses with any quarterback that's going to rack up 100, potentially like 150 rush attempts in a single season. And we see the wide receivers, the tight ends. If it's a crowded offense, there's not enough targets to go around, and that messes up the backfield too, man. As much as the efficiency of running backs might be helped by having a dual threat under center, when that guy's taking, touchdown equity inside the 10, and he's not dumping it down, he's scrambling, it just doesn't help. We're chasing that volume, and averaging an extra 0.5 yards per carry just doesn't cancel out losing, 5 touches per game. So for me, just kind of looking at the 49ers, like Jimmy G keeping the job would probably be the best thing for all those guys. And even, the muddled backfield, the same thing kind of applies there. So, hey, once Trey Lance is out there, he will be a QB1 immediately, I would guess, consensusly around the industry. The question is who we can really enable around that. And that's what's, I guess, out of any of them, like Sig, Ayuk versus Debo, I think Ayuk is the better overall receiver, but let's face it, like Debo's the one where he's getting those pop passes. Like he can get those from anybody. I think Debo, even though I'd have to look at the ADP, I think Ayuk's going ahead of Debo at the moment, but I think we can say Debo is the one with the safer floor just compared to what he could do with either QB under center.
Yes, I think that on a game-to-game basis, I'd rather have Samuel over Ayuk. Samuel, I mean, they both have spotty track records for staying healthy. It's just Samuel's a little bit longer. But projecting that offense, I mean, then there's Kittle, who also is not known for his durability. Fair. And how efficient is this offense going to be? It's exciting to think about this offense with Trey Lance. And it could spur the offense to much higher efficiency levels than it did. I mean, maybe not Jimmy Garoppolo during his Super Bowl season, because he was super efficient. I mean, that's the perfect Jimmy Garoppolo was that. I mean, that was the ideal Jimmy Garoppolo, was just passing.
We can't assume that's going to be them, man. I came across this stat the other day. Kyle Shanahan, since 2010, with Washington, Cleveland, Atlanta, San Fran, he's coached 3 top 20 scoring offenses. Like, I firmly believe he's one of the best play callers in the league. I'm not trying to say the guy is a fraud, but we can't assume this could be a top 10 scoring offense with 2021 Jimmy G or a rookie Trey Lance.
Well, look, I'll counter and say Trent Williams, Alex Mack, and also just the idea. This offense, I don't think Garoppolo's that good. I mean, I tell everyone, go back and watch the Arizona game Week 1 last year. He wasn't hurt yet. He was terrible in that game.
What about that 75-yard bomb to Mostert? Oh wait, it was just a angle route, 5 yards across the line of scrimmage.
He's still a good player, but we know this running game is going to click, and we'll see what Trey Lance can add. I always go back to RG3. The year in Washington as hope. So, but there's another question. Let me ask you this, Ian. Ian Hartitz, you folks don't know him. PFF, Hartitz. And it's great, man. One of the things I really love about following you is I can tell that sometimes you're grinding, you're watching, you're adding to the database. And so you just feel like I've got to share this with everybody, excitement. And so when we think about the excitement of Justin Fields in Chicago and the excitement of Trey Lance in San Francisco, and they're both going to be instant fantasy QB1, right? Instant. I mean, they're going to be at least what Jalen Hurts was last year. But when trying to psychoanalyze these coaching staffs, or also the variables of Andy Dalton's play, of Jimmy Garoppolo's play, because San Francisco and Chicago can win in spite of their quarterback, right? You could be in a situation where the team's like 7-1, and we're all saying they have to make a quarterback change. Do you trust Kyle Shanahan? Do you trust Matt Nagy to make the right call, or is this going to be something we're all going to be calling for weeks before it happens?
I guess Lance is the tricky one. That one I really just don't have a good feel for because, all right, I'm with you. Everything you said about Garoppolo, I don't think he's all that special either. He is a lot better than the usual incumbent quarterback for a team that just had the 3rd overall pick. So I know they went up to go get Lance, so not quite the same thing, but it's a bit tougher of a battle for Lance. And the fact that he only played 1 game last year and he was already this raw player coming out, to me, it would make more sense if Lance does end up spending, the first 8 or so weeks on the bench. And I'm a little more concerned about that. But this takes us, kind of side discussion, man. But this is why, I don't think these ranking competitions, honing in on median projections necessarily helps you win fantasy championships, because who do we want when they're all under center? It's absolutely Trey Lance. Now, can we get by, in the first potentially 7 to 8 weeks without him? I think we can with Mr. Ryan Fitzpatrick in the late rounds, but we can talk about that later. But Fields, man, I just after the draft, my first instinct was QB1 this year. And then the Andy Dalton stuff starts. And it's how they are not even making this a competition is just beyond me. The Eagles still, I don't think, have officially named Jalen Hurts their starting QB, which is ridiculous, but it's just promoting competition, which makes sense. You can respect that, even though we might mock it and make fun of it here or there. Not doing that is not the answer. Are you kidding me? Andy Dalton, the idea that we are being pushed towards this, imagining this as an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation is just so absurd in so many ways. Never mind the fact that Alex Smith was already an above average quarterback there for 4 years. Andy Dalton, take your 3 Pro Bowl stat and, throw it somewhere else. We don't care about those. And he's not been that quarterback for 5+ years. We've seen all sorts of evidence that unless he's on a rookie contract surrounded by a complete stud-filled roster, Dalton's not giving you much. So I think Fields is out there after 2 weeks. I hope so. They've already leveraged their future trading up to get the guy in the first place. I don't think the city of Chicago is going to be too thrilled if he's sitting there all that long. But hey, I want them out there as soon as possible. I'm with you. It'd be, definitely good for the excitement factor. I guess I'm just not overly confident it's going to be before. I'd say week 3 would probably be my cutoff for both. That would be the earliest I would think they'd be there.
Yeah, and I think it could be a lot longer because I'm looking at the schedule. I'm looking at the schedule a lot, Ian. I just jump over to it and let it marinate because hot starts. I was talking about this on a show recently. Hot starts are so important. And again, talking to Kevin yesterday, he said there's actually a kind of a halo effect of fantasy teams that get off to a hot start. But also you can start to look ahead and project scenarios. One of the things I pointed out with Dalton. And again, I think that Dalton's going to get first team snaps. Watch who gets the first team snaps in camp. Now, Deshaun Watson didn't get any, and then they saw Tom Savage, and so
2 quarters.
right. But this team, the other thing I keep thinking about is, and I bring this up a lot lately, the NFC North could be a terrible division with Aaron Rodgers. They could be a division that 9 wins takes down the division, so they might stick with him, Dalton, until week 7, 8, and 9 when they get Tampa, San Francisco, and Pittsburgh going into their bye. So week 10 bye, I would hope by then that gets resolved. San Francisco's tougher. There's not an obvious stretch. They don't have a lot of divisional games. Early on they get Detroit and Philly. So you could imagine they roll in those games. They get maybe an Aaron Rodgers-less Green Bay in week 3. So that one's a little tougher. What else are you wrestling with right now? Or otherwise things that you see what everybody thinks and you look at it and you see something different and you wonder if you need to correct or if it's the consensus that's off.
Well, you were just talking about this NFC North, man. I actually just put a little bet down the other day on Vikings Super Bowl odds. Right now, they're right there with the Cardinals. They're with the Steelers at plus 4,000. Really, the Patriots, the Chargers, the Dolphins, the Titans, all these guys have better odds than the Vikings. I know Kirk Cousins gets a lot of flack, man, but last year, the 3 top teams in terms of, I guess top's not the right word, but the 3 largest differences in points per game for rank compared to points per game allowed rank were the Raiders, the Titans, and the Vikings. Great offenses, awful defenses. I'm not really convinced the Raiders and the Titans have solved that side of the ball. Now the Vikings, getting Danielle Hunter back, getting Patrick Peterson, who's not the same guy, but I think maybe that system could still get some good years out of him. Before last year, Mike Zimmer, when people asked him hey, you lost your entire secondary. What's going on in defense? And his response was basically, I've never coached a bad defense. I don't plan on starting that now. Can't say that this year because he did coach a bad defense last year. With that said, though, if the Vikings are in the NFC North without Rodgers, with, Justin Fields under center, with Jared Goff under center. Like, they could easily snatch one of the top 2 seeds and, potentially make it out of this NFC if, things go right for them. So I'm not saying they should be the favorites, but the fact that they're not even posting like top 5, top 6 or 7 NFC odds is wild to me. And Cousins, people are going to say, oh, he can't win the big one. Like, the big one is only the Super Bowl, apparently, because the big time throws he made in that Saints playoff game from 2019 was incredible. I mean, that bomb to Thielen to set him up, and then Rudolph with the fade. Like, yeah, he lost the next week to an absolutely spectacular 49ers defense that made Aaron Rodgers look pretty mortal the week after that. So I think a lot of the Kirk Cousins hate is misguided. Seth Galina, one of our awesome PFF analysts, just, knows this real football shit. He was talking about how some of the additions they made to the offensive line should help Kirk a lot, because he is one of these guys we see hold the ball a lot, waiting for the perfect throw. But when he gets time, man, there really aren't that many better than Kirk. So Jefferson, Thielen, Dalvin, the offense is going to put up points. If that defense can just get a little bit closer to average, I think they can play with anybody.
Yes, and they just added Sheldon Richardson. He's back.
There we go. Let's go.
So, and that's a good ad, because now you have they're going to get back Michael Pierce, the run stuffing nose tackle. They added Dalvin Tomlinson, another immovable object type defensive tackle, but now they have Sheldon Richardson, who still was getting pressure on the quarterback. When he was with Zimmer, the 1 year with Zimmer, I think he had 16 quarterback hits that year and 4.5 sacks. So all this is good for Minnesota. And what we're talking about here, Ian, really is thinking about the trajectory of a team, thinking about how the season may unfold for them, because a lot of fantasy analysis seems like we're just assuming, until it's proven otherwise, that the same thing's going to happen as what happened yesterday.
Right.
Which, I mean, I get it. If you're predicting the weather, this is one of those things I heard that I probably repeat without ever knowing whether it's true. I was like, if you say the weather's going to be the same as yesterday, you're going to be right 80% of the time, right? Like, welcome to my weather forecast. It's going to be the same as yesterday. 80% accuracy, but we want to find them where things are going to change, right? Like, it matters if you tell me, like, it was nice yesterday, but it's going to rain today. So don't think you're going to be able to have a picnic. So
this is not Alvin Kamara's segue, right?
Is it? Go ahead. See, this is why it's on the couch, because we do is we create a space for things to just conjure into it. So go ahead. Go with that.
Love, man. So I was catching all sorts of heat. A lot of people calling for my job on the old Twitter sphere yesterday because we get these PFF, quote tweets from an article, and all it says is I would take Austin Eckler over Alvin Kamara. Never mind, I have them directly next to each other, same tier. I specifically say in the article, I'm not going to call anyone stupid for flipping it. I just think Austin Eckler still has the role that we hope Kamara has in this brand new offense. I mean, losing Drew freaking Brees can't be understated. That's why I'm worried about Jonathan Taylor as well, man. As much as these older, noodle arm quarterbacks, we might not, think they're all that anymore. Just the things they can do to set you up pre-snap. And in Brees' case, feed Kamara all the targets he can get while still engineering a yearly annual top 10 scoring offense. Like, that's not a given. We're going to see that again. And basically, again, like you said, Sig, we're not just projecting what happened last year to this year. That's going to get us in some trouble. So what are our 2 best splits with these guys? For me, it's Austin Eckler without Melvin Gordon. We've had 16 games of that since 2018. In those 16 games, he has had 3 finishes outside the top 24 PPR RBs. Alvin Kamara, in 9 games without Drew Brees over the past 2 years, the Teddy and Taysom games, has 3 games outside the top 24 PPR RBs. We've seen a lower floor because Taysom does not like throwing to his running backs, as we saw. Okay, the Eagles game, he picked it up. And I would guess over a whole season, Kamara would, play involved. Sean Payton's not an idiot. But is it going to be 80-plus reception involved? I don't know. That's a pretty high number to get. And with Teddy under center, we saw the receptions. We didn't see the same touchdown upside. So, hey, I know that 6 touchdown, week 16 game is still fresh in everyone's minds. Kamara won a lot of people championships last year, and he deserves to be a top 8 back. I can't get behind him as a top 3, top 4 guy. He's never been a 200 carry back. And the cheat code that has been his target share is at severe risk of being gone. Even if Jameis is under center, man, like, this is a guy with one of the highest average target depths over the past few years. I would say the fact that it's only Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, like, it's hard to get around that. Like, I just can't see any way Kamara isn't the second leading target guy in this offense. But I just think the touchdown equity is what a lot of people are kind of, we always talk about touchdown regression. he's probably going to regress because it's really freaking hard to score 19 touchdowns or whatever he did last year in a consecutive season. So the touchdowns and the targets have me treating Kamara as just more of a mid to low end RB1 than I think than usual. I don't think the Saints offense is necessarily one that we need to break our back to get exposure to these days.
Yes, I can dig it. It's evidence-based. What I like is you said, look, these are the splits that matter, right? So when we're projecting 2021, you want to narrow your focus to what we've seen. If your cases in the past that you're going to use as predictive have to have some similarity, some important, meaningful similarity to 2021. And, some of the things, I think you're right to do this, Ian, where you put the jeweler's eye on and you say, like, okay, well, what has Kamara looked like without Brees, right? But also, what has the Saints offense looked like without Brees? Because if you go back and look, in those first two games with Taysom Hill, Tavius Murray actually had more touches than Kamara in both games.
I think in the 4 games, it was Kamara 50 carries, Taysom 38, and Latavius had like 40. Taysom being in there makes it a 3-headed backfield.
Yes. And I don't think that that's being reflected in Murray. But then there's a larger thing, like you said, with Drew Brees, specifically in the way that he feeds the production of the running back in the passing game. But maybe there's a larger take, and it's tough. It's funny. My wife, we're down here in New Orleans, and she's really become a diehard Who Dat, and it's funny. There's the signs around here that say, thanks, Drew. This is terrible. I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying this. I'm totally going to get myself in trouble right here. You're going to be here to witness this. They say, thanks, Drew. And because it's like this outpouring of affection for what Drew Brees has done for the city and everything. But it's like, thanks, Drew, because you retired and now the offense can move forward. Well, we can go back and say, why did the Saints lose to Tampa? And the answer might be Drew Brees. So, perhaps it could even be a net gain for the whole offense if it's Winston. Well, and there's another layer to this. Like, do you think Jameis Winston's any good, right? Or if it's Taysom Hill, like what can Taysom Hill produce? But you're probably on the size of the pie is shrinking more than the size of the pie is growing. And it's certainly not going to grow in a significant way because the one thing that Kamara has over Eckler is touchdowns, right? I mean, Eckler's just not this automatic, give him the ball at the 2 and the 1 option that Kamara has been. That's how he got 6 touchdowns. However, the Eckler side of this is also interesting, right? Because speaking of evidence and speaking of a case that we can compare to, we haven't really seen a Justin Herbert Eckler offense settle in with all the pieces. And remember, this Chargers offensive line is trending to be the best offensive line we've seen for the Chargers since I don't even know when. Now there's Joe Lombardi. Some people might say that's a net negative, right? Like he's the one steering the ship and he might steer it into the rocks. Matthew Stafford might say that, right? But you have to be excited about Eckler in an offense that is creating more efficient touches for everybody because of Herbert. And what about the Chargers as an offense that was already far surpassed our expectations last year? Could it even surpass our expectations beyond that this year?
I saw I got to find out who said it before I say it on too many pods and just end up stealing it. But someone made a great point here on Fantasy Football Twitter. Could Mike Williams, 2021 Mike Williams, be this year's version of Corey Davis? Hey, past high round pick that has been good, not great throughout his career. And you can kind of attribute that to, some target issues. And hey, if he's out there, man, I've always been a Mike Williams believer. He's one of those guys where like, God, man, just catch your fall one of these days. Like he goes up there, skies for that ball and just shows no, concern for his own well-being as he crashes the turf, but he can go up and freaking get it. And we're talking about a former number 4 overall pick that somehow has never had, I think, even 90 targets in a season. Maybe he got there. He's never hit 100. And despite that, he had a year with over 1,000 yards. He had a year with 10. Yeah, he got a year with 10 touchdowns. And I mean, last year, okay, we didn't see the best version of him, but it was still only 85 targets. And okay, they added Palmer. They got Palmer, Guyton, and Tyron Williams. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got those guys. Yeah, Tyron Johnson, that's right. They got all those guys being the field stretcher role, but I think Mike is locked in as a number 2. Not having Hunter Henry, I know Jared Cook's back, but we can see Mike Williams easily surpass triple-digit targets, and he's going at just, I think, that wide receiver kind of 40 to 50 range where, yeah, if you are, if you're able to get Herbert on the squad, that's an easy stack to make that I think gives you a ton of upside. So, no, I'm optimistic about this Chargers offense. You brought the goal line stuff with Eckler. That's absolutely the biggest concern. I would just say, we'll see what this we'll see if Lombardi still views Eckler as someone that can't get it done around the goal line. And the good thing is, man, Kalen Ballage, Joshua Jackson.
Right.
Like, come on, like Justin Jackson, excuse me. But there's no freaking competition for Eckler. And he's, I almost think these undrafted free agents, like it just gets held against them almost their entire career. Like Eckler has been nothing short of spectacular. And, the fact he came back and played through that hamstring injury, even at so far less than 100%, man, dude is a warrior. People want to say he's too small. Pull up that freaking yoke pic of him from last preseason before you tell me this dude isn't a 3-down back. So goal line stuff is concerning. Hey, it is legal in the year 2021 to score touchdowns from outside the 5-yard line. So we do have that going. But yeah, the Chargers offense, I'm not saying they should. I would say if we had to go through and just preseason rank how we think every scoring offense is going to go, not say they'd necessarily be ahead of the Saints, but I think they're right there in the same tier, if not right next to each other.
Oh, definitely. No, this could be, again, that offensive line is exciting. Lindsley's there. They got Balaga. They had Slater fall to them in the first round.
Stay healthy, Chargers. We look at them every preseason on paper. If we can get Derwin, and we're talking about Vikings Super Bowl odds. I don't know.
Brandon Staley defense. Yeah. Whew. Chargers fans, a lot of long-suffering Chargers fans out there. And Eckler, when I think of Eckler in terms of drafts this year, Ian, it's like if you draw 10, 11, 12, and you can start out, say, Eckler, Chubb Eckler, whatever. You might mix in some people. Akers is a guy people are going to consider there. I don't know. I like the idea of starting off a team this year with Chubb and Eckler because they're both good. They're both always good when they're on the field. So let's turn to your call here, your protest in your handle, free Auden Tate, because I just like any kind of protest or otherwise, the right to dissent. So draw some attention to your cause here.
Auden Tate, inarguably the number 4 wide receiver in the NFL. At least the AFC. I got to give the number 1 honor to Tim Patrick. That dude did nothing except ball the hell out last year. But Auden Tate, man, like he's someone that I stumbled upon, in the preseason DFS streets in like 2017, 2018, just going through, all these backups. And all of a sudden it's like this guy, Auden Tate, has the size, was from Florida State. He's, coming down with these acrobatic catches in practice. And you see him in the preseason. He starts making big catches. All of a sudden 2019 comes around. It was funny. I was working at Roto World and my desk was, close by Josh Norris and Pat, and we had Roto Pat over there in town that weekend. I was just watching this Ravens game, and Auden Tate had like 5 catches, and every single one was just full out extension crazy. And I was over there, like they're like, Ian, the sounds you were making, man, we weren't sure what you were watching on your computers. So it's just one of those things where Auden Tate was someone that I never heard anyone else talking about. But the more I watched these Bengals games, I was like, every time they throw the ball at this guy, good things happen. And okay, he does have that Kenny Golladay factor where it seems like every catch he has is great because he doesn't really have the best separation ability. So they're always contested. I understand that aspect of it. But when you look in 2019, he was number 1 on the Bengals in yards per target. Last year, he sure as hell looked better than AJ Green when they gave him a chance out there. Unfortunately, we got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, 3 guys that certainly deserve to be playing over Auden Tate. I'm not trying to say that, but man, oh man, like if you haven't watched Auden Tate over the years, people, like you better not be slandering that guy because he is anyone's idea of a great contested catch receiver. And I hope that he gets a chance, to one day be a starter in the league. Look, I don't think he's going to be this, fantasy star or anything like that. I have to explain myself with some of these, projects, like when David Montgomery got hurt, when Tariq Cohen got hurt last year. Everyone's saying, Ian, this is our Cordero Patterson time. Should I use my entire waiver wire on him? And I was like, no, you do not want to play this guy in fantasy football as much as I would love to be wrong on that idea. So Auden Tate, great, in my opinion, great real life player. And T. Higgins said the same damn thing, man. I was lucky enough to get him on the PFF Fantasy Pod. So T. Higgins and myself are riding the Auden Tate bandwagon. We got plenty of room, Sig, if you want to hop on as well, man.
Oh, Auden Tate is one of those players, I should come up with a name for them, that are always the last one on and off of my dynasty roster because I want them, I believe in them, but if I need to make room, because I believe in them, right? You have that spark. Because again, this is where I talk about the enthusiasm, the excitement that you transmit sometimes with what you share and how you share it. And Auden Tate, even going back to Florida State, it is that amazing catch radius. They're in a strict catch radius competition. He might be number 1 in the league. He really might be number 1 in the league.
You remember those old sports sciences
Right.
back in the day. I remember there's one with Chad Johnson, and they have him in the studio and they just make him like dive, at all different angles. And then they go, Chad Johnson, and here's like a baby elephant. And they just showed Chad Johnson's like entire catch radius around the elephant. That's Auden Tate would be like a full grown elephant, man.
Exactly. That's awesome, man. See, now this is where we can really take football talk to the next level. And this is where we need Matt Price, the zookeeper. Because we can describe every player in the NFL's catch radius in terms of
by animal.
Yeah.
So let's think of like the short, like Hunter Renfrow. Is he like a house cat or something?
More like a rhinoceros or a hippo,
That's way too big for Renfrow. We need like a small insulting thing.
Right, with something definitely closer to the ground. But,
there we go.
this is as much as I want to go in this direction, I will bring it back to like a sober fantasy football layer that I think is overlooked, because you bring up Auden Tate, and this is what's important to know about Auden Tate from a fantasy football perspective: is structurally, he is the number 4 wide receiver in a 3 wide receiver offense, and one that will probably throw to wide receivers as much as or more than any other offense in the league.
Yeah.
I bring this up a lot. Burrow threw to wide receivers 28.4 times a game. My Lord. That's why there's 3 Bengals wide receivers going in the top 100. And they all could be hits. Yeah. All 3 of them could be hits. You could have 3 wide receivers in the top 100, and they could be hits because of the nature of this offense. So if one of them goes down, enter Auden Tate, right? Yeah. But here's where it gets kind of eerie. Because I just talked about this earlier in the show about Jacksonville, right? Jacksonville has 3 wide receivers going in the top 120, which seems a little... What are the other offenses that you could say that about? Cincinnati's 1. Auden Tate. Okay.
Denver with Patrick, Pittsburgh with James Washington.
You mentioned Patrick, right? Although Patrick's a little bit less exciting because of the quarterback for now.
Fair.
James Washington is a good one.
He's good, man.
And 3 Steelers are going in the top 120. Dallas has 3 wide receivers. Cedric Wilson.
Ooh.
Cedric Wilson's already a 100-yard game. Folks, Cedric Wilson has already showed if he gets on the field. So you know where I'm headed with this, Ian. We think about is handcuffs. Can we say handcuffs in 2021? I don't know. But injury upside, right? Like running backs. You think about Alexander Madison, whatever. Yeah. But we don't apply this to wide receivers. The number 4 wide receiver I'll give you another one, Tampa Bay. They have 3 wide receivers going in the top 120.
Scotty.
Next guy up, Scotty Miller, right? So these are the players that you need to be poised to jump on when the opportunity presents itself, because it's structural opportunity. And in the case of Wilson, Washington, Tate, Miller, these guys have all shown they can play. Another one is Dwayne Eskridge.
Yeah, that worked.
And then maybe the most obvious
29-year-old rookie. No, he's like 24.
Right. But maybe the most obvious one is Mecole Hardman or Byron Pringle.
I feel like last year I was pumping up this scenario for Mecole, and I got burned on it, and I'm afraid to kind of do it again.
Ready.
It's tricky. But like you said, if we're doing it with guys that have proven they can perform at a level, they're with a team where they've been there for a few years, and we've seen this happen, we can have some more confidence. The Bills are another one, and they're maybe the most unique just because, Gabriel Davis was someone that was getting so hyped. Right. I don't think Emmanuel Sanders is washed by any stretch of the imagination, which is crazy for him to be his age, coming off that Achilles from a couple of years ago, and really didn't look like he skipped a beat during that whole process. So, but how much longer is he going to be that guy? And is he even going to, take away too many targets from Gabriel Davis? This is one of the most 4 wide receiver heavy offenses. Now, even the most 4 wide receiver heavy offense is still like, 20% of their snaps, like on at the absolute most. So interesting in Buffalo, but hey man, if Diggs can't get every single target, and we know Josh is going to be putting up those numbers. So.
Yeah, I like Sanders because he's the 3rd one out of the 3, and I think that they were going to roughly have the same value. I think they're all going to have their.
Is Sanders going behind Gabe Davis?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Gabe Davis is going closer to Beasley. They're both going like in the 120s.
That's just you see those players in like pre-draft best balls that like James Robinson is still just so egregiously overpriced because of where his ADP was earlier.
Right.
It was taking AJ Dillon a little bit to climb down from the Aaron Jones signing too.
No, it's true. That's a whole other interesting topic, is that ADP is backwards looking, and ideally we'd be trimming at certain events. We would just trim off the data feeding into ADP before a certain date because it's bad data. Like anything having to do with Julio Jones or AJ Brown now, for instance, you're looking for the trends. And certainly what's the fun thing about it, for me at least, it's like Whopper. I mean, War Games. Is that before your time? I know you're a little younger
A
than
little
me.
bit,
War
little
Games.
bit.
Have you seen War Games? You remember War Games?
I think I messed around a little bit. I wasn't diehard though.
Well, War Games was like the Matthew Broderick movie.
Oh, it's a movie. I thought you meant a game.
No. It was a movie from the 80s.
Oh no, I saw this on vacation and I was actually kind of into it. I told myself I'll start watching all of Matthew Broderick's like bad B movies because he carried it well. He accidentally like triggers the
nuclear war. Yeah. War Games. You got to remember, I was like 8 or 9 when War Games was an early 80s movie. If you've never seen War Games, it's great. It's great. I can't remember who it was I had the conversation on Twitter, but it has this like trifecta of zeitgeist, right? Because it's early 80s, so it's hackers and technology, right? It's Cold War paranoia, and it's latchkey kids. It's kids that like their parents had no idea what they were doing. Who knew what you were up to in your room? They were working, or who knows, broken homes, et cetera, et cetera. So it really captures the zeitgeist, and it really captured me as like 8 or 9-year-old kid because he's in there hacking and he meets artificial intelligence. There's also some real heavy themes about minds and machines and artificial intelligence and the nature of consciousness in there. It's actually a pretty heady movie, if you ask me. But there's Whopper, the computer, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's got all the lights and stuff like that. Like the computer that's like making the decisions of whether to go to war or not. And that's how I think of the fantasy football hive mind, like the consensus, right? Like we're all like brain cells that are part of this big brain, and we're all processing our own little 1-0-1 binary questions and creating this ADP that shows what we think right now. Yeah. You know, it's like the market. It's terrible. I'm looking for a house right now. It's horrible. We're looking for a house. It's just the worst time ever in the history of humankind to be looking for a house. But there's this idea of the market and how it's reacting to things. Like put this out there at this price, it gets snapped up. Put this, people bid over it. This one just sits there. Why? What is the market saying? What is the fantasy football market saying? You're one of the brightest shining brain cells in the brain. Tell me some other things, Ian, that like you like, what do you do? How are you deciding like what to write about or what to investigate right now?
Yeah, so real quick with the idea of that market, man, I think if you're a fantasy analyst, and you have your own rankings, if you're not taking, the kind of industry ADP and comparing that to your rankings every couple of weeks, like you absolutely should be, because you'll find out directly which players you're higher and lower on, just, a few VLOOKUPs away from figuring that out on the old Excel sheet. And like, that's what kind of took me, for one example, to realize I'm a lot higher on Devontae Smith than a lot of people. I have him like as my wide receiver 25, 26 right now, right alongside the Cincinnati wide receivers. When I say he's going in, almost low end to borderline wide receiver 3 territory in the late 30s. So, just kind of recognizing that, hey, see that when I saw it pop up, I was like, okay, I'm 13 spots ahead of consensus on Devontae Smith. Do I want to be? And I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I feel good about this. So I'm going to make a stand on it and we'll go through it. Other times, hey, it's a good idea. We always, I was potting with Evan Silva last Friday night, and he was saying how it takes him, several, lots of best ball drafts to really stabilize his rankings, because you go in, you start asking yourself new questions, you kind of see a player comparison that you hadn't thought of, and like, don't be willing to change your mind when you have new information come to the forefront, people. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we get in with the NFL draft. We have 3 months of focusing on these guys. Everyone wants to do the pre-draft ranks, and like landing spot and draft capital is just so important. And hey, it's great to have as much knowledge as possible about all these guys. I'm not saying you shouldn't be studying the rookies before they land on a team. Just be willing to kind of quickly, change your opinion as you get the new information. I mean, Khalil Herbert seemed like he was a pretty great running back prospect. I saw him in, top 5, top 6 sometimes. What the hell is he going to do on the Bears? Absolutely nothing. So maybe it works out, but I guess just be prepared to change. But yeah, the way I've kind of set up my offseason is to try to go through each and every one of these situations. I got a 100-article and 100-day series going on over at PFF, basically going through each team's quarterback, backfield, and then their passing game. And, I don't really have a structured order. I kind of enjoy waking up and being like, I want to write about this guy today, and not keeping it too serious. But that, and then I'm, talking about him on the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast in the form of some fantasy files as well. So for me, it's literally just, going through every single spot for every single team, because we got 3 months, Sig, it's the whole freaking summer. So we got the time, might as well make the most of it.
I just call it a best ball guide, and then everything's presented in terms of best ball drafting, because that's what's going on right now until the fishbowl starts. Which division are you in?
I gotta check. I'm not sure. I just saw my invite a couple weeks ago.
It's the music one. So
Ooh. I don't think they're doing music anymore. I thought it was like female stars.
It's music.
Both?
So I'm
Okay.
in the fish division with Pat Thorman and many
Ooh.
other illustrious people. Anyway, there'll be more fishbowl talk right now.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to, like you said, like it's just a brain dump of your thoughts, putting a little more detail for each team right now. But as you said, as things change, you should be open to changing your thoughts when you're presented with new information. But sometimes the new information, Ian, is just looking closer, right? I mean, just being inquisitive and looking closer. So I don't know, where are you at right now on the 100, on the path to 100?
Ooh, we're doing pretty good. I got probably about 30, 35 done so far.
So you're well down the road.
Yeah.
In the process of writing these, what's something that surprised you? Something that you found yourself saying, I didn't expect to find this, but I have, and now I have to change what I think about this.
The Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray kind of thing, just with that, how just absurd their rushing upside has been. I mean, look, the best version of Lamar Jackson in 2019 was the single best fantasy quarterback we've ever seen. Kyler Murray, before hurting his shoulder last year, weeks 1 through 10, that pace was even ahead of what Lamar had done in 2019. So the rare time we can get one of these mobile quarterbacks that also puts up high-end pass numbers, it breaks fantasy football. And to your point about how we got to be projecting guys into next season, not necessarily hanging our hat on last season, like, should Josh Allen be the consensus QB2? I love Josh Allen. He should be in that tier. But I just think if you look at the potential, is he really going to run for 8 touchdowns every single year into perpetuity? Like, looking at what's going to happen, I just think Lamar and Kyler and that rushing floor should be getting a little bit more steam. Dak coming back from a horrific ankle injury. I have him in my top. I have him number 4 right now ahead of Lamar, but just really thinking more about that. I am getting a little antsy about potentially valuing that even more so than I already am. And yeah, man, it's just, I would say, like, going through Tua's situation, it was someone where, no, I'm not going to pay attention to his 5 interception OTA here on June 15th. I'm going to look at the fact that they added Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller to an offense that was absolutely horrific when he was out there in terms of what he was working with. I mean, these were the receivers that got targets when wide receivers that got targets when Tua was under center last year. Devontae Parker, Lynn Bowden, Jakeem Grant, Mac Hollins, Isaiah Ford, Malcolm Perry, Preston Williams, and blast from the past, Antonio Callaway. Like, what was he supposed to do, man? And now we give him Waddle, who a lot of people thought was the number 2 receiver in this draft, and Will Fuller, who, I don't need to tell you the splits that Deshaun Watson had with and without him over the course of his career. Like, just, again, kind of zeroing out, having the chance to look at Tua's situation last year and, just asking the right questions. And I'm a firm believer that we need to watch as much football as possible. That shouldn't be a hot take in an industry where we're writing about football, but like, come on, like, I understand you don't want, the analytics should match what your eyes tell you, and you should know what the right analytics are based on what your eyes are kind of leading you to. And I think people that want to just be all in analytics and say that, film, almost is a negative thing, like, that's just an excuse for being lazy. Get the hell out of here with that sort of take. And I think the opposite is true. If you want to say numbers lie, I just want to focus on the film. No, there's a happy marriage to be found. And I just know personally, like, I ask the best questions and I find the best stats and the answers from watching the game and just, being stuff like, damn, like Aaron Rodgers looks unstoppable throwing deep. Is he the best quarterback throwing 20 plus yards downfield? So as I'm watching, every single game, I just got a little Excel sheet where I'm just constantly writing down questions to research later. And I think just, really doing that and just kind of basing your opinions on what you're seeing on the film first and foremost will help you just get to the bottom of what the problem or lack thereof might be with some of these players.
Yeah, I'd love it. Well, just I think of it in terms of merits further investigation, right? Like, you're watching things and you just say, you come up. I've always said that analytics and data analysis in general, it gives us good questions to ask.
Yeah.
It doesn't answer the questions. And the players answer the questions on the field. That's where the answers come from. But you brought up some good things here. I want to go back to what you said about Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and just sorting out that top 5 quarterback tier. And Mahomes is going to go first, and that's kind of like a ceremonial thing that he deserves. He's probably not going to be the one who wants to break the seal at quarterback in your league. And I find, honestly, the simplest way to convey the strategy is try to be the person who takes the fourth or fifth quarterback. I don't even care who it is. Just try to take the fourth or fifth quarterback off the board. Hopefully your draft slot, or if you're in an auction, the prices, you have a little more control. It's probably going to be Dak. It's probably going to be Lamar Jackson. Usually Murray's going to go third, like you said, Josh Allen second. But it's easy to look back and say Josh Allen had everything break right for him last year. There was a little cold stretch, but he pretty much had everything break right. Murray got hurt. Lamar Jackson battled an inefficient offense for more than half the year. Dak got hurt. And Dak was setting a pace, even, I think, higher than Murray's pace. Like Dak's 4-game pace was higher than Murray's 10-game pace, or whatever the injury happened, I think. So but it made me think. I was thinking about this, Ian, the other day. Speaking about things that happen when you're just like stream conscious doing your work. Somebody out there should try to find a career year algorithm. Kind of like, what are at least the precursors that often precede a career year, right? I mean, it's very possible that Josh, and I hope it's not, but it's possible that Josh Allen's career year was last year, right? You can look like certain increases, percentage increases. Now, sometimes it can be explained by changes in coaching and things like that. Go ahead. You got something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I studied this a little bit just by looking at what X year of experience for basically top 12 PPR performers over the past decade. And what I found was that, rookie running backs are far and away the ones that are getting it done more often, but they really kind of hit a wall after that year 3, especially year 4. Whereas wide receivers, you see even year 5, year 6, we got 16, 15%, just hit rates, which is pretty high in this study. So wide receivers are the players where I think on that second contract, you can feel a little bit better about than the running backs. Tight ends, like rookie tight ends never do anything, but like we actually kind of see a decent 3rd-year jump at the position. And then in terms of just getting older, like 10 plus years of experience, if you're a QB, your tight end, it's fine because you're an exception at that point. Like we know who you are. You're a future Hall of Famer and you're still managing to put up numbers. Running back and wide receiver, though, that's where it starts to get awfully iffy. So, I'm trying to be more of an ageist this year. I want to be out a year early than a year late. And I'm not saying that just because of your necessary age. It's have you looked like a player that has fallen off, not as efficient last year because of your age and you're getting older, get out a year early versus a year late. So, Marvin Jones is someone that I actually think fits that bucket. I'm in the minority. People look at the 9 touchdowns in consecutive years. Great job, Marvin. But what was he doing before Kenny Golladay got hurt last year? Absolutely nothing. So, hey, Marvin made the most out of those 10, 12 target games with Matthew Stafford feeding him the ball. I'm not convinced that Trevor Lawrence as a rookie is as good as Matthew Stafford. And I don't think Jones is going to see anywhere near that amount of target share. So, if you draft Lawrence and Jones, he's not going high in drafts. I get it. So if you want to complete a stack, I'm not saying it's the worst idea. But, between Marvin Jones and just, some of these other guys getting older, that I just don't think – particularly Marvin, man, like he's been a contested catch maestro throughout his career. Like that seems like same thing like Dez Bryant. Like these types of receivers, I don't think really age as gracefully as we would hope. So,
yeah, I think when you bring up the idea of avoiding players on the downslope or potential downslope of their career, sometimes I feel like I think it's because we create so much content, Ian, or we spend so much time thinking about it, that there's a much more simplistic way to go about creating a target list for a draft, and you really just do like total, again, like knockout factors, like nobody on the downslope of their career, just put a line through them all, right? Like maybe even like Ezekiel Elliott, who's like at the peak. Like if we feel like they're at the peak or starting the down, we only want players on the upslope side that we feel like are affirmatively on, and say like in a good offense, right? So all the team players on the upslope side of their career.
See Houston, see Detroit,
Right. Or maybe like teams with a good quarterback or guys that weren't hurt so far before this. Some people say like, just don't draft anybody who's been hurt before the season started. Like why? Why even add that? Or players that aren't coming off of off-season surgery? And maybe you'd only, it's like a New England Patriots draft board. Like maybe you only end up with like 15 players, but those are like your 15 like priority players that you do your builds around. Like we make it too complicated, but we like to make it complicated.
It's incredible. Injury prone Twitter out here in June just knows exactly how many games everybody's going to be playing. I mean, hey, Joe Mixon got hurt last year and he missed all those games. So we're going to hold that against him, but McCaffrey, Saquon, they're fine. They still deserve to have their top 3 ADPs, like, come on, we got to draw the line at some point, people. We're hearing about Derrick Henry, just all these touches, which, hey, it's a fair concern. I'm not saying you should consider these things, but, what about Ezekiel Elliott? What about Jonathan Taylor? Like, look at all those Wisconsin touches. Like, we can, and I'm being tongue in cheek here. Like nothing is wrong with
No.
Jonathan Taylor's injury potential, but like it's the line with these injury prone guys is going like this. It's never like a straight line.
We think we know a lot more than we do, and you just need to treat everything on a case-by-case basis.
Exactly.
And here's what might be. We're going to go into pet peeves. This is like, instead of off the rails for the last 10 minutes, Ian, we're just going to gripe. Cool. It's airing of the grievances. No, just whatever you do think, if you want to stick your neck out and say, I'm not taking Joe Mixon near the turn. Like, again, is Mixon in that group with Eckler, Chubb, Akers, or do you think that his injury record knocks him out? But he has played like 14, 16 games going into last year.
Exactly.
Only 6 last year. Now, you might say on the specific, it's a foot injury that wasn't corrected by surgery. And that's something that you kind of, it's like a ghost that's going to surface. But look, I don't care. If you don't like Joe Mixon because of the injury risk, and you say, I don't think he's going to play 17 games, I don't think he's going to play 12 games, then I feel like Samaje Perine is one of the most undervalued players in fantasy football. Because if some percentage of people are sure that he's going to get hurt, Mixon that is, Perine's the next guy up. And this offense could actually be okay this year. We'll see. By the way, you brought up Tua, and I just want to say that's one of the biggest puzzles to solve. Because that's actually another offense, Ian, believe it or not. Those 3 receivers, Parker and Waddle and Fuller, are all going in the top 120. Well, Parker's close, right at the threshold, but Fuller's going first. So that's interesting. Fuller ahead of Waddle, although there was an item out of mini camp that Waddle's still not fully healthy, like someone say a little bit limping observed. So, and he did have a pretty gnarly injury last year. So maybe just on that front, although Fuller is no stranger to injuries. So that's going to be a fascinating one to dive into, especially with the co-offensive coordinators and continuity.
Well, I might look at that. Yeah, I might look at that passing game. What it tells me is Mike Gesicki's being drafted like 8 spots too high. He lost his slot job. That is now Jalen Waddle. They have a 3 wide receiver set. They no longer have room for a tight end wide receiver hybrid. Like Gesicki and Devontae Parker, we're dinging Devontae Parker for Ryan Fitzpatrick not being there, not having the same sort of contested catch, friendly quarterback, which I think is fair. For some reason, Gesicki isn't getting dinged, and people say, he was being really productive with Tua. Remember those wide receivers I just named? Like now we have freaking Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle, where we got the, ex-Bama shower narrative going on as well with that. So I think, just Gesicki, like he is it was ridiculous. It was like 77% of his snaps, I believe, last year were as a slot or just pure wide receiver. Like I wish more of these. It's a shame that Jimmy Graham didn't get his way back in like 2013 when he wanted to be called a wide receiver. Because I see people like almost hating on Travis Kelce. Like every now and then you got the guy brave enough to try to hate on Travis Kelce, and they go, he's not a tight end, he's like a wide receiver. That's just like a meme way of saying he's underpaid, because for whatever reason, like these wide receivers are making more money than the tight ends, even though the tight ends might be putting up similar production with added blocking responsibilities. So, tight end position, go make some more money, guys.
Yeah,
just call yourself a wide receiver.
Wait until Kyle Pitts franchise tag, and there'll be, speaking of grievances, there'll be a grievance about where he is classified. Okay, we just have a couple minutes to go off the rails because we get excited. We're excitable. Yeah. But I'll just ask it to you this way, Ian. Who or what is something that influenced you to kind of make the bargain with the world that you have? Like, I can tell like the wavelength, the frequency you exist at. I feel your comfort, man. It's working for you. Who helped influence you so that your life guided you to this spot?
I would give a lot of credit to Jonathan Bales, as always, for giving me my start in the industry. And, I remember I always had like multiple jobs. I was writing for a bunch of different places and stuff. And then once I kind of quit my consulting job, because I just didn't like the business world, man, not for me. Once I quit that, I remember like kind of, I wasn't complaining to Bales, but I was just kind of like, I was making this extra money doing these different things. And now I don't really have that going on. He just made a good point. Like, best thing you can do for your long-term career is to, just work your ass off and kind of put your eggs in the fantasy labs basket. And he was 100% right on that. I would say keeping the day-to-day motivation, as corny as it might sound, I am a Conor McGregor stan, not a very good human being. I get that, but he is someone where, over the years, seeing him rise up, he just had that quote, man, winners focus on winning and losers focus on winners. And I've kind of gone by that, where even though, a lot of my friends, I missed more than enough happy hours over the years. Plenty of good times just grinding away fantasy football. And hey, I'm sure your mentions aren't always filled with the nicest people here and here out. There's a lot of reasons to get down on yourself, and if you listen to what others say, you're always going to be kind of being hated on stuff. So don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from, and just do what you want to do. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I said a long time ago my goal is to be the number one guy in this industry. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I'm a hell of a lot closer now than I was back then. So we'll continue to grind day in, day out. And Sig, I think we said this before the show, man, we're talking about football. Like got to remind ourselves of the job sometimes. So I guess just having that motivation to try to get to the top here, and then also just realizing like I do not want to go back to having a real job makes it pretty easy for me to stay excited every day.
Right. I was talking to Kevin O'Brien yesterday because sometimes I feel like, I don't know, remiss. I was supposed to be I have a law degree and a bar card. I was supposed to start the revolution, fight for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. And, instead, I just found an existence where I could do something for my work that doesn't feel like work. It's something I enjoy. But he said something nice to me that what we do is help people with their mental health. I think that's fair.
I hope so.
I think that's fair. We hang out. I mean, we try to create a comfortable place, a safe space, if you will. How are we going to figure out who the number one guy in fantasy football is? You said you want to be the number one guy in fantasy football. How do we determine this?
I don't know, man. I'll tell you what, I don't, with all due respect to the past winners, I know some sharp ones. I don't think it's the Fantasy Pros accuracy competition. I think, if you look at it, you're getting, most people on Twitter, we're getting our content across on Twitter through articles and through podcasts. And hey, man, if you stack up who you think is best in each of those things and kind of get almost consensus fantasy ranking, I think it'd be something interesting. So, like I said, trying to build that up. I don't exactly have a good answer in my mind, and I've kind of thought about that over the years as well. Like, am I chasing a goal that I don't even really have perfectly defined? But you know what? As long as chasing that goal keeps making the old bank account look okay, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, that's certainly what I would say is that we're all tied at number one. I mean,
there we go.
Plenty
of room at the top.
Right. I mean, if you're getting to do it, like the measure of success is that you're credibly out there doing it as your occupation and in a way that's sustainable, and that we're all number one. We're all tied at number one because we can do it. I thought it was funny to think about. I was like, how would we figure this out? Like some sort of, what was it? The competition back in the 70s was called Superstars. Do you ever see any clips of this where they have all the athletes from all the different sports like compete in
I've seen some one-offs. Yeah,
it was great back in the 70s. Like it's like who's going to be the best overall athlete, like from what sport, and you have them run obstacle courses and do all this different stuff, like fantasy football. Like, well, I don't know what the version of that would be, but it would be fun. Hey, and honestly, with this rise of sports betting, I think they already have done something like this, right? Like the decathlon of gambling or something like that.
It was a gambling Olympics. Yeah, I was actually there chilling while they were running through all those hoops. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So they were doing it was like such a tense atmosphere because I think the grand prize got like $30K. I was like in Vegas for like a fight, but it was put on by my company, Action Network, at the time. So I was welcome to come hang out. And I was with my guy, Justin Fan, head guy at Fantasy Labs MBA, just one of the sharpest dudes you'll come across. And we were planning on just hanging out. And then like someone dropped out. So Justin got to enter the competition. So it was at this mansion, man. I was just kind of chilling. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm alone. I'm going to take advantage of this. And I just, took some gummies that happened to be around, just hanging out by the pool, having a good day. Meanwhile, everyone's inside playing, freaking Connect 4 for like $30,000, like losing their damn minds. And I'm just, hey, having a good little vacation here.
Yeah, as it is. No, it is fun to be playful about this stuff, to not take ourselves too seriously.
We are all wrong all the time. You can't have this big ego all the time, man.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe much more. You know what we're like, Ian?
What's up?
We're like those people that would go from town to town and like pretend to we're snake oil salesmen, right? Like, I can tell the future. I've figured out how to tell the future with my special system. So if you want to know the future, just step into my tent and give me 50 cents and I'll tell you the future, and they let us get away with it. And
you're talking about sports gambling, man. Like my old company, Action Network, I think they do a good job with what they try to do. But like when they kind of started hiring these people and they track the picks, that's their big sell. You can see how your favorite sports gambler does. And it's like, oh, wait a second. All these people that are very smart, they know football, their analysis is sound. I don't think they're missing anything. But it's really, really freaking hard to hit your gambling picks like a 55% rate, man. Credit to those that can. Not many of them are out there producing content, because if you can, you're just, pocketing that cash for yourself. So again, nothing against those people that try. You should, try, put your name out there, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll land among the stars, type of mindset for sure. But yeah, it's one of these industries where it's, really in, football, we talked about having amnesia, just next play attitude. Yeah. And I feel like that's how you got to kind of be in this industry. Next article up, next article is the most important one. Just try to, you want to remember your mistakes. Absolutely. But you also don't want to let past mistakes, influence future failures.
And most of all, stay engaged, like we always do with Ian Hartitz. And it's always no amnesia. We always want to remember the time we get to spend together with folks like Ian, with folks like you, folks out there, always, because you're